Using M.A.B. with Mr. Lowe's.
Mr. Lowe's.
In this video, we will be using M.A.B. to count on and off the decade. Again, I will be using the interactive M.A.B. from the ABCR website. In our first video, we counted by ones, remember? And we paid attention to the ones changing. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 ones make 10. Then in our second video, we counted by tens and watched the tens changing. 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. 10 groups of 10 are 100. And we saw the hundreds change when we counted by hundreds in our third video. 200, 300, 400, 500. Well, in this video, we will be counting forwards and backwards by the decade. Do you know what decade means? Decade just means 10. And counting forward by the decade means you add tens. Counting backwards by the decade means you take away tens. So it's kind of like counting forwards and backwards by tens. The only difference is we might already have some ones. For example, we might have 2 ones. So if I count forwards by the decade, remember decade means 10, what will happen? Will the ones change? Or will the tens change? Let's see. The tens changed. Now we have 1 10 and 2 ones, which is 12. Let's count forward by the decade again. Remember, counting forward by the decade just means adding 10. Now we have 2 tens, and still the ones are the same, which is 22, 32, 42, 52, 62, 72. Now let's count backwards from the decade, which means counting backwards by taking away tens. Remember, decade just means 10. What will happen when I take away a 10? We have 7 tens and 2 ones. Let's see. The tens changed. Now we have 62. Let's count backwards by the decade again. 52, 42, 32, 22. Let's start with a different number. I'm going to start with 10, 20, 30, 40, 1, 2, 3, 4. 44. So we're starting with the number 44. Now let's count forwards by the decade. Forwards by the decade means we're adding 10. Let's see what happens as we add a 10. Now we have 5 tens, so it's 54. Let's count forward by the decade again. 64, 74, 84, 94. Now let's count backwards from the decade, from 94. Backwards from the decade means we're taking a 10 away. Do you know what will happen? 84. Now we have 8 tens and still 4 ones. The ones are still staying the same. Let's count backwards by the decade again. 74, 64, 54, 44. Now let's try a different number. I'm going to make the number 100, 200, and 10, 20, 30, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 237. Let's count forwards by the decade. Forwards means adding 10 more. Now we have 4 tens. 247. Let's count forward by the decade again. 257. Again, 267. Did you notice the hundreds haven't changed? And the ones haven't changed. 277. 287. Only the tens are changing. 297. Now let's count backwards from the decade. 287. 277. 267. 257. 247. 237. 227. 217. 207. How can I keep going backwards by the decade? I need to take away another 10 because I'm counting backwards by the decade. Do you remember how many tens are in 100? Remember the song? 10 groups of 10 are 100. Because there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 groups of 10 inside that 100. So if we have 10 tens and I want to take away a 10, I will now have 9 tens. So I need to take away this and put up 9. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's keep counting backwards by the decade. 187, 177, 167, 157, 147, 137, 127, 117, 107. And if I want to keep counting backwards by the decade, remember, this is 10 tens in here. There are 10 tens, and I want to take away just 1 10. So that means I will have 9 tens up here. So I need to put up 9 more. I took away the 10, replaced it with 9. Now we have 97, 87, 77. Now let's see what happens if we count forwards by the decade from a different number. I'm going to make the number 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 65. Let's count forwards by the decade, which means we're adding 10. 75, 85, 95. What's going to happen when I add another 10? We count forwards by the decade again. Will the ones change? Will the tens change? Will the hundreds change? Let's see if you remember. 10 groups of 10 are 100. Now we have 100. And the tens are back to 0. And we still have the 5 ones. Let's keep counting forwards by the decades. We have 110, 115, 125, 135. Now I'm going to make an even bigger number. Let's make the number 1,000, 2,000, 200, 300, 400, and 46, 7, 8. 2,448. Let's count forwards by the decade. Remember, forward by the decade means we're adding 10. So what will happen when I add another 10? Will the ones change? Will the tens change? Will the hundreds change? Or will the thousands change? Let's see. Counting forward by the decade. The tens changed. Now we have 5 tens. So the number is 2,458. Let's keep counting forwards by the decade. 2,468. 2,478. 2,488. Now let's count backwards by the decade. What's going to happen when I take away a 10? Will the ones change? Will the tens change? Will the hundreds change? Or will the thousands change? When I take away a 10. Let's see. The tens change. Now we have 7 tens. 2,478. Let's keep counting backwards by the decade. Now 6 tens. 2,468. 2,458. 2,448. 2,438. 2,428. I think that's enough for this video, but maybe you would like to practice counting forwards and backwards by the decade. I hope you learnt something from this video. See you next time.